Well, here we are. It's the 28th of December. I'm still at home and I'm up in my man cave, which is my converted loft space. And I have to say that the storm is raging around me at the moment. So if our listeners hear any odd sounds, it's probably the wind howling around the roof. And I have to admit, there is at least one loose slate. So if you hear a clunking sound, that'll be my roof taking a pounding from the gale that's going on. That's the situation. What's the important thing? The important thing is that I am joined today by Moira Dundee. And UK column viewers and listeners should remember that name because back in March 2023, I interviewed Moira all about her efforts during lockdown to get out and really challenge the system and also educate people as to what was going on. So, Moira, thank you very much for joining me today. I know you're a busy lady and you've also got guests, so we'll grab your time. Thanks for joining me.
Good morning, Brian. Hello, viewers.
Yeah, well, listeners, it's going to be on this one because one of the things that we've learned over time with the UK column is that although, of course, all of us have got used to stuff with video, there are many people that enjoy audio because they can be listening to it while they're cycling or walking or driving the car. So it's a medium not to be neglected. Now, Moira, there's lots of stuff to talk about, but the subject to this little series of interviews is gutsy women. And for me, I easily put you in this category because I know that it took you a lot of courage to stand up, get out publicly on the streets during lockdown to challenge the system. And for anybody who doesn't know, who can't quite remember what you did, just give us a little bit about your skipping on the streets during lockdown. What did you do and why did you do it?
Well, before we go on boasting about me, I realised at the time that there wouldn't be many people in my position who could speak out freely because I didn't have children to be picked on at school. I wasn't working for the NHS or government. I didn't have a job to lose, self-employed. And my income has taken a hit. But, nothing like, I think everyone's done what they can based on their circumstances. That's what we've done. So I felt I was in a position to speak out and I had to do it. And the first thing I bought was the two little loudhailers and looked at them. I've got a good photograph Eric took of me looking at them because I didn't know what to do with them. But then I decided if I couldn't protest with other people, because that was at a time where we were under bail conditions to leave the house. They said we could only leave the house for exercise or to go shopping, essential shopping. And so if I couldn't protest with other people, I would have to protest alone. So that's why I did my skipping protest and I put my camera on tripod and filmed myself. And I was lucky it wasn't windy, that it didn't fall over. And I had to skip, to show that I was doing exercise. So it's absolute bonkers, isn't it? You have to do that to be outside, to speak out safely. And even then I thought I could get a knock on the door from the police, but I didn't. I just got a lot of abuse underneath the YouTube video. Now I know from the 77 Brigade, the British Army.
Well, it could well be, but you've said it there because a lot of people, the majority of people, just accepted what was thrown at them with lockdown. I know people locally, I know some people within the wider family who were actually quite scared in that period. And the idea of going out when they'd been told that they mustn't go out and they wondered whether the police were going to come knocking on their door. So you as a woman decided you were going to get out and have a protest and talk to people. And you've already now indicated to us that cost you something. So you were pretty brave to do this, even though you might not think of yourself as brave.
Yes, well, you were really ostracised from society, you know, well, just locally. Or even I saw somebody had written a comment from the badminton club I was in saying that nutter, you know, writing a comment saying what a nutter I was. I used to play badminton with her. And I tried to put a comment. I joined the group so I could put a comment back. And I was banned immediately. I mean, I didn't swear or anything. I wrote a polite reply, and I was just like banned immediately from the badminton, whatever it was, blog. And so it's been very hard. I haven't gone back to sports clubs because when you've had that sort of nastiness, you know, targeted at you, it's not easy to show your face again. Now they, you know, think it's all over.
Yeah, this is true. I mean, I smile on this subject because many years ago, when I started speaking out, obviously on other things, we hadn't had the COVID situation then, but a lot of people I knew pulled away from me. So within my local community, I was ostracized. Yes. And yeah, it's quite hard to take. I always add to that I lost people who I thought were old, trusted, reliable friends. And I'm pleased to say I met new people who ultimately I've come to realize are much better friends, because when the chips are down, you can actually trust the new friends I have, whereas the old ones walked away.
But I've also had lots of new MI5 agent, police informers, undercover police friends. So I've been through the whole gambit, and I've absolutely woken up to how the world works. It's basically a criminal gang, but the police informers are the most dangerous because they're not wearing a uniform. So you know not to tell someone who's wearing a uniform things, don't you? But so, I mean, I read an article saying after Police Scotland was formed, they had recruited 800 police informers. It'll be 8,000 now. So they're among us, doing any jobs, doing what they like, and but they'll get money for information. And sadly, the protests are full of them.
Yes, well, this is absolutely correct, because many occasions we can see the police trying to encourage people to tell on each other. And a little while ago, I was talking about the Stasi state in East Germany, and of course. That was a terrible period for Germans living in Germany under that regime. But many people in the Western countries don't really realize how the system worked, but it worked by the fact that they created this huge network of people who would spy for the state. So you had the situation where family members were reporting other family members to the Stasi. Yes. And this is really unpleasant, and I agree. It's certainly a system that's now been created in this country. Whether we can look back and people were informing on who was breaking the lockdown rules, yes. Or we've got the situation where they use primary school children to report on drivers who are speeding. You see primary school children at the roadside with police, and then the children are speaking to the drivers they pull over. I found that particularly horrible.
There was an article in the paper, I think it was March this year, NHS bosses admit that they gave a list to private detectives to follow on social media. It was the relatives of patients who died in a hospital in Glasgow. I think it was from poisoning. The water was poisonous. And that's just all, nothing happened, just all blows over. But if you give a list to a private detective, I mean, if somebody's called Fiona Brown, you've got to know which Fiona Brown, don't you? Where they live, rough age, what they look like. So this is really sinister. And they're not just following what they're writing on social media. They're reporting back, but they're also, I think, spying on them. I believe, I mean, I've only got partial evidence, but I believe I was spied upon on behalf of the NHS. And information fed back. I mean, I think at one point, all my friends I was working with, I believe, were working for the state in some form or other. And I just woke up a few months ago to the horror of it. I was falling out with people every second day So it was quite an interesting time. And but I think I've shred all these bad people from my life now. But another one, he was trying to, maybe on 7 occasions, I've got the evidence, I took the screenshots, trying to get me to goad me to commit a crime myself. He said, oh, we should capitalise. Some people are prepared to go to prison. This is something we should capitalise on. Mm-hmm. But yeah, suggesting, the least criminal was, oh, I'd like to film you and such, throwing eggs at the politicians. Now, if I did that, it would be assault. So they're goading you to commit crimes, demoralising, also trying to get you to divert your attention maybe to things you shouldn't be working on. They're a bit of a waste of time. So it's very difficult to know what you should be working on. I've been led astray terribly, but I'm back now. I'm back.
No, well, that's good. And you're back and you're still laughing.
I'm alive. Oh, yeah.
Moira, just let me just ask you one little thing. It's a bit of a reminder because we talked about it back in March, but you also had a particularly unpleasant approach by a lady from a local paper, a journalist who got in touch with you, who I think in the beginning you thought was going to do something productive. Just remind us what happened with those journalists.
Yeah, well, I didn't explain that very well when I was interviewed. I remember what she did was she said that there was a protest when there wasn't. I repeated twice, or 3 times to her on the phone that there was no protest. All we did was hand out leaflets, and that was my first leaflet. If you're on audio, the leaflet it says "Say pants to muzzles," and a picture of me with a pair of pants on top of my head. And I went down Dundee High Street giving out those. Now, so I on the phone, I said to her, all we do is hand out leaflets. And 3 times I said, it's not a protest. I'm not organising a protest. 3 different times. Got a witness that heard that. And then the first line she wrote in the article, a protest has been organised. A protest is being held next Saturday in Dundee City Square. Organiser, Moira, such and such. So then they sent the photographer to take a picture of 3 people in the square, you see, to show nobody had turned up, you see, to a protest that it was never advertised or organised. So then I found the photographer in the shadows the next week. I thought, is she going to be that dirty? But she was. And I found the photographer in the shadows. And I didn't have my pink sweatshirt on. I just put on a accent, and I said, what's happening? And he said, oh, it's a protest against the masks. And I said, oh, that was cancelled. And he went away. But then they were going to do the follow-up article to shame me. But I wrote her an email and I said, I've got a witness that heard me saying that 3 times, and they didn't print it.
I was going to ask you that question. Did they actually print anything on you? But they backed away when you challenged them.
Well, they printed the first article saying there was a protest. I'd organised a protest for the following Saturday, and making out I'm a Nazi. Whatever that is now. It's got a new meaning, hasn't it? Like a lovely person or a lovely man or woman is the 2003 definition. But anyway, so she'd written an article, but they were going to do a follow-up article shaming me, making out that everyone in Dundee is for the mask wearing. So it was a big setup to make a fool of me and to show compliance.
For our audience, we've just reconvened. We had huge problems on Zoom because the connection kept freezing. So we've switched to a recorded phone call. So let's see how this goes, how the relationship between people had changed. And we briefly sort of mentioned the Stasi type state. So just recap on who's been in contact with you.
Well, I'd rather not say who, until it's all, the book's written. But he's doing research into the Stasi-type techniques that have been used on us since March 2020 in Britain. He experienced them straight off in England, and I've been involved from the outset in Scotland. So he just finished reading the book about the miners' strike, which I have. It was written by Seamus Milne, The Enemy Within. And it's all about the dirty tactics of the state, which they're all the same being used now. And I think they pretty much consider to be the case that Arthur Scargill's right-hand man was undercover MI5, an MI5 agent.
Yes.
So he's very interested in that, and but he's an academic, so he's going to be researching it properly, and he'll know what you can and can't say, which I would just get myself into trouble if I tried to write a book like that. So, but yes, it's been a lot of dirty tactics and demoralising, dividing people, and then they cause as much trouble as they can to divide people, and then they go on videos saying, "Oh, we need to unite. We need to unite."
Yes, they tell us the exact opposite, or what they say is the exact opposite of what they mean. That's the conclusion I've come to. It helps you understand a lot of things. If you think, what are these people actually saying? And then you think to yourself, okay, what is the opposite to what they're saying? And then often it's the opposite that makes sense.
Well, that's what they did at the plinth, when they stood at the plinth. We're not going to do this. And then we thought, oh, no, they're going to do it. And they always did it. We're not going to do this. So the whole thing's been creep. And I think actually this is the worst situation we're in, is right in this moment in history, because people think it's over, and it's absolutely not.
Yes.
There's nothing being sorted out at all, and these farces of inquiries, I mean, it's almost twisted. They just want people to go over the trauma again and again about how their relatives were tortured and murdered, basically, and nothing happens, nothing changes. It's quite extraordinary. But this is the big news I've got in Scotland, Brian, that the Declaration of Dumfries have been in touch with me. And their intention is to carry out a people's inquiry in Scotland. Okay,
this sounds interesting.
Yes, because we're so disgruntled that the form the one they've done has taken. It will take the form of a grand jury proceedings to determine whether there is sufficient evidence to put the perpetrators on trial. And I think it would be held possibly over a weekend somewhere in Scotland, and all the evidence looked at. Because the inquiries, they're never looking at the crux of the matter, which was the beginning, when the fraud was committed right at the beginning. The medical fraud.
Yes.
That's what they don't cover. And, all this discussion about whether the virus exists or not, what's relevant to us is the Scottish Government or the UK Government, they hold no evidence it exists. So that's what's crucial. If there's no evidence, there should be, everything they did after that is criminal. The passing of the emergency legislation was criminal, in my opinion, looking at the evidence.
Yeah. Moira, when you're using this sort of language, and it's to me, it's the right language to use. We're dealing with criminal activity.
Yeah.
When you look back and you think back to Moira pre-COVID days, do you find it strange that you're now describing official activity as criminal? Have you changed, or were you always this perceptive?
Yeah, I've completely changed. I'm completely changed, and now understand it is a criminal mafia running the world, and they've got their little criminal gangs in each country. And then the police informers are, another little criminal gang protecting the medium criminal gang, protecting the big criminal gang, and it's just, and we pay for it all. We pay for it all in taxation.
So the whole of the COVID and lockdown, this was a major change in your life. I mean, you got out there to do what you did in your protest. You got attacked for it. You lost a lot of friends. But something else was happening. You were on a big learning journey as to what the world was around you.
That's right. And anything to do with how many people died or whatever, and whether something existed or not. I will never accept that any politician puts bail conditions on my life. I will never accept that. And that was, to me, just a red flag. These people have no right to be doing this. I didn't care what the situation was. There will never be a situation where I will consent to having conditions put on my life.
Yes.
And I couldn't understand why people, they will accept being caged in under certain circumstances. Yeah. I mean, if every second person in the street was dropping dead, I still wouldn't consent to it.
Yes.
Let's just see who survives, because, I mean, I find that quite disturbing how a lot of people just don't want to be free, do they?
Well, this is where we drift back to what we were just talking about. That people seems to me that some people at least, have lost the ability to think in a cognitive, coherent way. They look out at the world, they see things and they hear things, but they don't seem to understand what it means anymore. I feel this more and more when I'm, amongst an average group of people, and there's conversation going on, and they'll talk about their families or holidays or things, but they don't talk about anything which is of importance. It's like it doesn't exist.
So vacuous, yes. Yeah, but I've discovered wonderful things as well. I mean, we don't need to be worrying about catching HIV or, there's all these, all the lies that have been exposed to me. I mean, the whole contagion one is the biggest, but when people, it's just presumed that people are contagious. And every study in history that's done controlled experiments, a sick man cannot make a well man sick. And it's been proved over and over and over again. So it's actually great news that we don't need to be frightened of anybody, no matter how ill they are, because we're not contagious. It's never been proved that we're contagious. So wearing bee costumes and everything and claiming someone's got Ebola, it's all a load of rubbish. I think Kevin Corbett has told me that as well, Dr. Kevin Corbett. There was a study done in 1996, and it was over 10 years. Maybe it was published in 96, but it was over 10 years following couples. One was positive, another negative with HIV, and the negative one never changed to being positive in 10 years, of having unprotected sexual intercourse. So, I mean, how does that happen? Is the testing that's the pure scam, because people presume that if they test positive, then they've caught something from someone else, but they would have tested positive whether they'd never had sex in their life. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just such a scam, the test. So if people just avoid tests, it's just great. They can, they don't have anything to worry about. So, that's what I was looking at, one of my leaflets that Stella had helped me with. She was the former biology teacher who I was arrested with when we were running the suitcase library. And she said all that she had taught in school, she now knows was just was a lie. And so she helped me with this leaflet, and there was quite a good sentence, if I can read it to you, about viruses. I've said, like storms, they are given names, and virologist scammers create an image using computer software which resembles a crocheted ball to convince people they are real. Right? And, but I believe the whole vaccination programme from start to finish is a eugenics programme. And the folk in the know never, ever, ever take one, and their children don't take one, ever.
Yeah. Moira, while you're talking, I'm smiling because you've got there's a little bit of a pun here, a dark pun. You got such an infectious laugh. And we've had a bit of fun trying to set this interview up, and you've been laughing a lot. This is something which I think is incredibly powerful. You've been through all the stuff that you've been through. Well, I've mentioned some of it there, but you got out to protest, and that takes huge courage to do because you're breaking the norm. And then you lost friends, you had the press chasing you, you were arrested with all of that entails, and yet you're still able to talk through the story of this little bit of your life, and you're laughing at the same time. This is wonderful.
Well, it's also incredibly interesting, isn't it? The last nearly 4 years have been filled with horror, but also comedy as well.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just it's all so mad. And we're living in two different realities now, aren't we? The believers and the people who've finally woken up and seen through it. But about my arrest, all that worry just ended for me about 2 weeks ago, because at the time I was charged, was caged in the back of the police van, taken to the police station, held in a cell for about 6 hours. And when I was released, I was charged with culpable and reckless conduct, which it says, if you look up, maximum sentence, life imprisonment. Now, in March 2021, the case was not called, right, which is an unusual, it's unusual. I mean, it wasn't dropped, it was not called. And my solicitor explained that meant that the charge still stood against me. So I have been concerned about this for 2.5 years, and thinking if something else happened, or could I get into America, or applying for a job, it would come up in a criminal check if it's outstanding. I didn't know where I stood. I mean, am I supposed to be appealing or whatever? I didn't know. And I eventually sent a subject access request to my solicitor, and he just blanked that, got nothing, no data, nothing back. Or I was hoping for he'd been sent by the court. I got nothing back there, and eventually did a subject access request to the Scottish Courts and Tribunal Service. And I discovered a decision was made in June 2021, and he never told me. He never passed it on to me, and it was from the Procurator Fiscal saying that no further action would be taken against me.
Well, that's very interesting. I'm not surprised at the level of deceit, because deceit by the legal and the court system, because this has been seen in many other cases. But nevertheless, it's very interesting that they were so frightened of Moira Dundee, the lady who protested by skipping yes, in public, that when they finally dropped that charge, you weren't told about it. I
wasn't told about it, yeah. And also on the court records, it says when it was not called, it said reason, it was no evidence.
Wow.
No evidence. So why wasn't it dropped? So that it was obviously a plan to keep me living in fear.
Yes.
That's what I believe.
Yeah.
So that's the big news, Brian. It's just ended recently, and it's been very time consuming trying to find out what actually happened to me. I paid my solicitor a lot of money and to withhold information from me. Well, if I'd represented myself, I would have got the information sent to me.
Again, I've got to say to you, Moira, that it's a sad thing, really, because, we could point a finger at all professions. And yes, at various points, professional people fail or do the wrong thing or get sat on. But it has to be said that it seems to me that the legal profession are just totally owned by the system. I usually hear about their failings through people who've been through the family court system, and people who initially take on a solicitor and maybe later a barrister in order to fight their family court case eventually say, I realised they were betraying me. They would say one thing to my face, yes, we're going to do this in court. And then when they got in court, they would say something completely different.
I've seen that myself.
Yeah.
Now, that brings us on to another topic, which is related.
Hang on a minute. Let me just do this, Moira, because I normally have been asking the Gutsy women that I've been talking to a bit later in the discussion what they would say to other women. But you've just described some pretty nasty stuff because, you were arrested and then you were worried about what was going to happen to you. And I think this is a good time to do it. You've been all through this. You were originally an ordinary mum, if I'm allowed to say that.
I'm not. I'm not a mother.
You're not?
No. I just have lots of nieces and nephews that I spoil rotten.
Okay, right. Let me rephrase that. You were And I mean this.
Nobody.
I mean this in the nicest way. You're an ordinary woman, getting on with your life, and then you realised something was wrong. You went out and you did something about it publicly, and you suffered all this, and you are still fighting, and you're still laughing. What do you say to other women out there? What do you say to other women? What would you say to get them to stand up and be counted?
Well, the same as I'd say to everyone, just do what you can personally, and every little helps, revealing the lies. So, it could be somebody still within the NHS, who's doing what they can, to nudge people in the right direction, not the wrong direction, things like that. But my arrest, to go back to that, I mean, I actually believe now that it was all planned. My arrest was planned weeks in advance, because I announced I think it was the 2nd of January, I went out in the street with my suitcase library. And I think it was after that, you see, I think they had their high-level meeting, and because they knew where I was going to be. They knew where I was going to be every Saturday from 12 to 1:30, and they set a trap to arrest me. That's what I believe. And they planned a job at Police Scotland Angels for me. They did this is what I believe now. All the evidence suggests they did a skills check, website design, filming, editing, design work. All my skills, and they created a job for me. And then they arrested 2 women in Edinburgh, and the trap was set. And then they arrested me the next week. She enters my life via Facebook Messenger. And the rest, as I say, is history. And I was tricked into doing actually 2 years providing 2 years free labour. And now I learn I was basically, I believe I was in a roundabout way working for the police.
Yeah.
Because people trusted me. They then came. This woman was claiming to help us get compensation from the police to get some justice. That's never transpired. But she's friends with conflicts of interest. She's friends with that solicitor. So basically, she's ambulance chasing for him.
Yeah.
And but the whole thing's very nasty. And I've just got out of it recently. And at the point that I did, asked for a bit of financial transparency about donations and things, she started going to the police and making up false allegations against me. I received something in the post. Taking me to a simple procedure, trying to get me to pay for a website they'd commissioned, and trying to blackmail me for a substantial amount of money. Or they would take me to court or they'd put this initial writ into court. I didn't pay anything because everything I said was true. All my claims are true. And nothing, that was about 2 months ago, nothing's come of that yet. So it's been real nasty stuff. I mean, this is people who say they're against the police and the courts.
Yeah.
And then when you ask for a bit of financial transparency, when you wake up to what's really going on, that's when you get hit.
Absolutely. Moira, I want to ask you. The first thing is to ask you for what you would say to women to get them to stand up and be brave and do.
Well, I don't know.
You answered that. You gave an answer.
Well, I don't know. Well, you see, I don't know because I mean, I think if you stand up against the state, this is what happens to you. You're going to be in the lion's den. Yeah. And then if they're putting that amount of resources on you, then you know that they're you've got all these people in your life spying on you and using you and controlling you and whatever. You realise, well, I'm obviously over the target, haven't I? I'm obviously saying the right things. Well, my book, I mean, I look at my book now, and apart from wanting to change a few odd sentences, it was all correct.
Yes,
and I published it in December 2020.
That's your book, Questioning Lockdown.
Yeah.
Yes.
They can also go, it's questioninglockdown.com, and they can still go to the Listen tab and listen to the whole book for free, still.
Yes.
On Amazon, it is on Amazon now, after, they let me on again. It's been unbanned, and it's on there in a nice hardback with a different cover, and there's a wee bit at the end about the censorship and what happened to me, just trying to lend it. in the street at the height of the tyranny. But unfortunately, nothing's been sorted. Nothing's over. I mean, they've made the legislation permanent in Scotland. The Coronavirus Recovery and Reform Act 2022 gives the government like Guantanamo Bay powers, the detention camp in Cuba, and also that, you'll know about it, that covert intelligence sources. You know, that there's that horrific legislation in the past. The UK government in 2020 that allows them to, their agents to commit crimes against us, and including murder, rape and torture.
Yes, Mike Robinson, of course, was talking a lot about that and pointing out the incredible state that here we are in UK in 2020 and on, where the government calmly says we're allowed to break the law as long as it's in your best interests.
Yes, that's right. But don't worry. Yeah, so it's only if you're an anti-vaxxer that you'll be on the hit list. You know, because they say we're a threat to national health security. Yeah. So NHS is basically the police now. You know, it's everyone's just it's just surveillance, and the NHS, just think of them as just another police force. And that's Fiona McQueen. She was the chief nursing officer for the Scottish Government. She's now choosing top cops, sitting on the selection panel for top cops in Scotland. She now sits on the board of the Scottish Police Authority. So Public Health are now choosing police. 3 sat on the panel for the deputy, who's Jane Connors, came from the Met office. 3 sat on the selection panel. 1, the former chief nursing officer for the Scottish Government, Fiona McQueen. 2nd one was the CEO of Public Health Scotland, Angela Leach. And the 3rd one was Ian Livingston, the chief of police. So 2 out of 3 were public health. So they've chosen the right woman who will pervert the course of justice up here, just like she did at the Met.
Yes.
So it's really, you know, people think it's all over. It's just, I mean, I just don't know where they're coming from. But yes, I think that's the most dangerous time. That they could strike any day. And all the government has is a verbal claim from the WHO that there is a public health crisis.
Yes.
That's all they have.
Moira, you've just recognised that when people stand up against the state, you can expect something to come back at you. I mean, I have experienced this in my lifetime from what I've done. You've learnt this. Are you a braver woman now as a result of your experience?
Well, a wiser one. I mean, I suppose I took people at face value. I can't do that now. I cannot do that now. And check them out. What's their background? Have they been done for a crime in the past? I mean, you know, try and find out what you can about people before you do any work for them. I mean, there's been all these grifters. I mean, we see it. I remember the millionaire Simon Dolan, his court case at the beginning. Do you remember that?
Yes, vaguely. Yes.
And giving some money towards that, and everyone just for 4 years, all these people just wanting money. And nothing's happened, apart from you've just lost your money. I mean, even sadly, I mean, Rainer Foolish is in jail now. I mean, we don't know, you know, what's true and what's not. But, I mean, it's just all these people who were coming to be our saviours. There's actually nothing happened.
I'm going to disagree with that a little bit because I think that a lot more people are... You know, having said earlier on in this chat that there are people who still can't think properly, I do actually believe there are also a lot of people who've started to think and they realise that something's wrong. So I think that the effort by many people, Rainer Fulmick is one of them, that what he did inform a lot of people. But if you say, yeah, but what did it achieve? Well... If we were hoping that within the state system there would be reflection on his evidence and his efforts, and then we would be getting the bad guys appearing in court. Of course, that hasn't happened because the state simply protects itself and carries on regardless.
But it went on and on, didn't it? You know, I mean, they sort of figured it out. Like, you know, could have figured it out in a couple of weeks. I mean, I think this, declaration of Dumfries, the People's Inquiry to determine whether there's enough evidence to put the perpetrators on trial would be over a weekend.
Yes.
Because all the evidence is out there now, and somebody has painstakingly taken all the clips from the Scottish COVID-19 inquiry of the families giving testimony where they think criminality has been shown to have happened. I mean, there was a very impressive young woman who'd managed to get her brother's medical records. And I think she said her testimony is there was a signature on the do not resuscitate form and it wasn't hers. Well, that's criminal right there and then. But, the police nothing happens. These things are just said and then just move on. But he's kept all the clips. He was uploading them to YouTube and the channel was actually taken down. And all he was doing, he wasn't even commenting, he was just putting up clips that are in the public domain. So,
Moira, you've had, just remind me, the lady school teacher that was helping you. What was her name?
Stella.
Stella, that's right, yeah. You had Stella helping you. Have you had any other people who've come forward to give you help in what you're doing?
Well, loads of people. I'm in contact with people all over Scotland. Because they did trust me. We have people who've always sent me information. And so, yes, my book, everything, I couldn't put it together without help. And I'm still in contact with Kevin Corbett because I met him at a protest in Glasgow. So right. He's been great, and he's been great at. That was one wonderful thing we did. We went around all the schools in Dundee. Stella went in beautifully dressed and handed in information to all the officers, about the mask. Anyway, Kevin helped me with the script for that. Teachers should be reminded that if children to which they have a duty of care suffer any oxygen deprivation or worse following teacher enforced masking, then they will be held legally liable for any subsequent untoward effects. Yes. As a direct or indirect result of those teaching actions. But anyway, I remember he was dictating that to me. I think he was sitting on a beach somewhere dictating that to me before I went out. And so I'm sort of an ideas person and I'm good at the visuals and maybe explaining to people simply things. But it's other folk who've given me terrific information.
Yeah, so this is a very positive thing, isn't it, that's come out. If you hadn't have gone out there skipping, you would never have, you wouldn't have experienced what you've experienced, but you also wouldn't have come into contact with so many people. This is a good thing, isn't it?
Well, that's right. I think I've got just over 500 followers on my YouTube channel. But yes, at the time, a lot of people said they saw that skipping video and it gave them hope. Because they were concerned, worried if they were going mad themselves, because they were thinking, this isn't right.
Yeah.
This isn't right. And when they saw someone saying, no, this is wrong, because that's it. It is, I never thought I'd live to see the day where actually, it is like saying 2 + 2 = 4 is difficult. Pointing out the obvious.
You were keen to tell me something about what you've been doing on the subject of resources, and I'll just share with the audience that we've got today. A few days ago, you kindly sent me a little video clip where you were singing a song at home, and your husband was playing the guitar.
Yes.
That was wonderful. So we're going to use some of that music, but also you've done a number of video clips. What else have you produced then to help people? There's your book. You've been producing videos. What else?
Yes. Well, I don't know, but I think song is powerful because I wrote those words. That's what I came up with first, was the words, and thinking that anyone could put whatever tyrannical country they live in, they could sing the same words, because the problem is the government and judiciary the world over. So I'm also working with new people. It's called Steps to Justice, but different people who had problematic things happening with them in relation to the police and judiciary. So we actually did a protest a couple of weeks, was it the 21st of December, and in Edinburgh, and we're supporting John Halley. You know who John Halley is, don't you?
I'm going to have to say no, because I can't directly remember.
Well, I think he perhaps spoke when you had a conference with a meeting with the Fornethi women.
Okay. Yeah.
But he's written a very, very important book that's come out of Scotland. It's just been published a few months ago, called he is an advocate and part-time sheriff, and the book is called Judicial Monstering, and how they've destroyed him because they wanted him off the Scottish Child Abuse Inquiry, and the chair, Lady Smith. Anyway, he's calling for a resignation of the chair, Lady Smith, and so are we. And it was also to bury evidence that he's presented of child prostitution, trafficking in children's homes in Scotland linked to lawyers and judges, past and present. And he's a very brave man. And he even tried to take the woman to an employment tribunal. He can't win anything now. This is a guy who was really brilliant before and, knew the law inside out. Now he can't win anything. Now they've decided to attack him, and he was on the front page of every newspaper in the world, but he's actually done nothing.
This was the man that was on stage at the Fornethi conference.
Yes, I think so. I wasn't there, but he's on Twitter. He's, I think, advocate Halley. He's one to watch anyway. That's really important, because what I realise is, no matter the topic, it's all coming down to the same thing, that we don't have a functioning judiciary. He says we're run by the rule of lawyers, not the rule of law. They'll pick what they want the result to be and then look back and find a little point to win on and just do what they like. And so in Scotland, it's really bad. The Lord Advocate has a dual hat on. It's a woman called Dorothy Bain. She sits on the Scottish Cabinet, Scottish Government. She sits in the Cabinet. She represents the Scottish Government, and then she also is head of prosecutions. So she's supposed to work for us and the government, but she always sides with the government, obviously. So she won't allow a investigation. She won't. We've sent all the information, all the evidence to the police about all the COVID crimes, mountains of it, and they're refusing to investigate. Well, she won't make them. She's the only person who can order a prosecution. An investigation. She's the only one that can order an investigation for the police to investigate, and she won't do it because she represents the government. So we're living in an absolute banana republic in Scotland. It's absolutely dire. And John's book just highlights that. And he says the whole thing needs restructured. Whole thing is just an absolute abomination. Just a few corrupt people running Scotland. Mm-hmm.
Yes, for me, obviously, I'm south of the border, so I only get a look into Scotland as a country. But the thing I did pay attention to many years ago was when the police districts, for want of a better word, were scrapped, and they were replaced by one single police body for the whole of Scotland. I always thought that was unbelievably dangerous, because it just meant that if there was a problem inside Scotland's police, who could you go to?
It's really bad. It's so bad.
Yeah. Yes.
And the chief and the deputy in charge of criminality, they've both been shipped in from England. So they won't even know anything about Scots law. But so they just go from the Met to Police Scotland, from Police Scotland back to the Met, and you just need two corrupt folk at the top to actually, But yes, it was. I meet retired police constables all the time, and they're as concerned as I am, and they say all the rot set in when Police Scotland was created, so they have to get back to the divisions. The other thing is, within the police force there can be terrible bullying, or somebody who whistleblows within the police, but they've got a wife or they've got a relative further up, when it's a one force. they can just destroy that person. Whereas if it's at least across different forces, it's not as easy.
Yes, which is probably why they got rid of the forces, the separate ones, because with one police force you can control everybody inside the pyramid.
That's right. And I read that the average time that people are lasting now within the Police Scotland is 3 years. So I think that tells you how bad it is, because they used to last 30 years. They used to do the job for 30 years. Now people are leaving within 3 years. And there's no jobs, the employment situation's dire in Scotland, but they're still leaving. So it must be really bad.
Yes, I believe that this is orchestrated breakdown of the fabric of society. If you can't trust the police, if you can't trust the courts, if you can't trust the NHS, this is all breakdown at a very fundamental level. And I do not believe that this is accidental, because if you look across these various bodies, you've seen the same pattern of breakdown emerging, and that says to me that it's calculated. People have planned this, and then it's orchestrated in the way it's carried out.
Yes, and I think I'd maybe been led astray thinking that the police, as I say, are all the enemy, when I realised it's these police informers are much worse. And there are good people in the police, who are concerned. And I met somebody's mother the other day. She said her son's in the police, and he refused to wear a mask or to take part in any of it. And he was made to work from home. But anyway, they're not all monsters, but I think I'd got led astray a bit on that one, thinking that they are the big enemy, where it's not. It's a few at the top.
Moira, just push you a little bit about the resources and things. I actually, earlier this morning, I had a look at 3 little video clips that you produced. There was a Merry Christmas, everyone, which was, I think that was from last Christmas, but still pertinent. You had one that was carols singing the 12...
Yeah, the first year we did it was 12 years of COVID, and then last year 12 years of convid.
Right.
Yeah. But I think whatever you're doing, you've got to try to bring a bit of creativity and a bit of fun when you can to things. But yeah, in the beginning it was all about letting people know their rights. I had little how to be, because people didn't know how to get a card from the NHS. I'm exempt from wearing a face covering, and I'd give out little tags, so people knew what website to go to get these things. But we've kind of moved on. We're not in that phase now. So, I myself think, unless this is brought down somehow, the police, I don't know how it's going to happen, but lower down some of these police, they go to my website, they go to the evidence that I've presented, or they wait until we've done this people's inquiry, and then they see the evidence and they go and arrest key people. And they jail them, because nobody's come to save their families either.
Yeah.
Something has to break. Something has to, and people have to risk their jobs. They have to risk their life, or them being incarcerated, because without bravery, this isn't going to end.
Well, now you've mentioned it, haven't you? The bravery bit, because this is where we started with you as a gutsy woman. And look at what you've really achieved, Moira, from that first day, when I can imagine with some trepidation you took yourself out with your pink top, presumably, and your recording equipment. Look at where that's led you. If we had other women who would follow your lead on this, the whole effect gets hugely magnified.
The thing I'm most proud of is the book. 1,600 copies out there in the whole of Scotland. Paperbacks, that's a problem for them. And loads of people didn't take the injections because they read the book. Loads of people. So I can be very proud of myself for that, because it was a risk publishing that when I did.
Yes.
That felt really risky. I thought, oh my God, because a lawyer hadn't looked over it or anything. And I just thought, I've got to try and get this out there so people... Because right from the outset, I could see they're just forming a case for getting drugs into people. That just seemed what it was all about. And but now on my hardback, I've got a different cover with question marks on it, because, you know, I'm not trying to frighten people now, because the people who've taken it have taken it, and I don't want to be frightening anyone, and you just hope that a lot of them got a placebo.
Yes.
You know, that's what I hope. And I certainly don't want to be sharing any, you know, scare stories. I just think, don't take any more. Don't take any more. Don't do any testing.
Did you say hardback?
Yes, it's a lovely hardback, yeah.
And where is that?
The paperback can be bought from me still on the Questioning Lockdown website. I've got about 20 left, but I didn't like the quality of the paperback on Amazon. That's why I went for the hardback. Yes, once there was no more lockdowns, that's when they allowed the books to be back on. So it's censorship, temporary censorship, until the drugs are in arms. That's how Amazon works.
Okay, so just remind listeners of where they go for your website then.
That's questioninglockdown.com.
Okay, right, excellent. I'll make sure that's in our notes as.
And also on that, which is important, is I've got a heading, COVID dossier. So it's all the evidence that's been sent to Police Scotland on that. And the last letter back has said, they've said it's not a police matter, all this. I mean, there's crimes within crimes. You know, I mean, I've sent evidence of a young man who said he wasn't allowed free association, wasn't allowed out his cell. But he wasn't allowed free association in Perth prison until he took the JAGs, until he took them. And he was only there on remand. Hadn't even been found guilty of a crime, and so he took them under coercion. So these are crimes. So there's crimes within crimes within crimes that we've presented, and the police are saying it's not a police matter. So I wrote back, said, who says that? Who made that decision? And I got 2 badge numbers. They won't even give their name.
Yeah.
So anyway, on my website, the COVID dossier heading, and you'll see all that's been sent to the police. And you never know, it might be if somebody else knows what to do with it, or, you know, because somebody said we could approach it from a common law point of view, because the police, this is a complete dereliction of duty, that they're refusing to investigate a crime.
Yes.
Loads of crimes.
Yes. Moira, next question for you. I've asked about other women, but I have been saying quite freely for some time that it seems to me there's a lot of men out there who are not standing up to be counted as men. What would you say to the average bloke who's not doing anything at the moment? You're a woman. You're gutsy enough to have been out protesting yourself. What would you say to the men?
Well, I don't think you should be doing this, Brian, trying to create division between men and women. Because I couldn't do any of it without the support of my husband, whether it's cooking a meal, buying food. He never complained when 1,000 books arrived on a pallet, you know. And I met a man gave us a terrific speech about the Scottish Child Sex Abuse Inquiry. It's been going on. The millions have spent, maybe 83 million, but what's all happened in that? And he gave a wonderful speech. And he told me on the phone he couldn't do any of it without his wife working.
Yeah.
And helping him. So I really think we shouldn't be. It could be just more women had the time to do it. You know, I don't think. But yes, I know all these bad men who just go and watch football.
Well, I'm just going to push back a bit, because my intention is not to cause division. Yeah. But I don't have any problem in saying there are a lot of blokes out there, a lot of them toughies, who are not engaging. They're not engaging to protect their families. They're not engaging to protect their children. And it's not just that they're football fans and going down the pub. It's the fact that they're not standing up to be counted as men. And I'm not shy of saying that it's been apparent to me for a long time. It goes back really to the start even of UK Column, when it was 3 ladies of mature years that came alongside me to help create what we've created. And I feel more and more as a man that I look out there and where are you other blokes? Where are you? Now, there are a lot doing things, this is true, but on the other hand, I mean, one of the ladies I interviewed was Kim Isherwood, and she said to me that she's 5'7" and I'm thinking, wow, you're the size you are, and you're taking on the whole of the establishment. Where are the big tough blokes? So it's not about creating division, but I think as a male, I'm allowed to look out there and point a finger at some of the big blokes and say, where are you?
But it is bread and circuses as well, though, isn't it? I mean, and around here where I live, it's also golf. And so between golf and football, and work, they've actually got no time to think about anything else.
Yeah.
And yes, well, it's difficult. But I mean, this has gone on so long now as well. I mean, we're all pretty weary. We're all weary, but that's why I think it's great that we're regrouping. People have got in touch with me now recently. Now I'm a bit freer. With new ideas. Oh, and David Tate, he's written a lot of articles on UK Column for you. I'm in touch with him. Had a really good conversation with him on the phone the other night. He's quite funny. And anyway, he wanted me, he says this is something, we are concerned about this Leslie Roberts. They're making out she's a whistleblower nurse in Scotland, and there was a sensational article in the paper saying that it could be the biggest homicide investigation taking place in Scotland ever. And she's saying that the nurses didn't have adequate PPE. And and then that's a red herring. But they say, they didn't test people before they left hospital and put them in care homes. But and I think maybe also backing this Anne's law is saying that they can treat. It's terrible. It's basically saying you can still treat the elderly in care homes like prisoners, and in a pandemic, they can assign one person to go and see them. I mean, it's abhorrent. But this is the sort of thing they're sort of fighting for, which is all, it's all terrible. So we're a bit concerned about this, Leslie Roberts, and David's showing her all this information on Twitter and getting nothing back. Nothing back. So she's not acknowledging that nothing. She says, the pandemic was real. She's not acknowledging the medical fraud at the outset. And I'm saying, look, if you're in touch with the police, give them information. Give them that's on the COVID dossier. Blanked. Just nothing. So what are you going to get out of this investigation? Thicker PPE the next time. Do you know what I mean? It's just we don't, this is absolutely terrible. But he said, the one thing, he said not a lot of people know. She's talking about making out they were risking their life, the occupational hazard, working with, when people had COVID-19, the alleged new disease. And he says it's called RIDDOR, RIDDOR, reporting of COVID-19. It's Health and Safety Executive. Anyway, somebody got an FOI, and it says, it's asking, how many workers died of occupational exposure of coronavirus through either deliberately working with the virus or being incidentally exposed to it, right? And the response was, I can confirm we have no recorded deaths due to exposure to biological agents between years 2019 to 2022. On the RIDDOR database. And he says not many people know this, and he thinks it's important when these nurses, when she's claiming that they didn't care about that these nurses were exposed to this, great danger. It's just a load of rubbish.
Wow.
But but I think, the state wants that, whether she's in on it or not, they want that investigation because it doubles down on everything they've done. Do you see what I mean?
Yes. Yeah.
Doubles down on everything, except worse next time. They could add to their torture techniques. They could add, you've got to forcibly shove a probe up someone's nose or down their throat before they're allowed to exit hospitals. So they're like Hotel California. You can never check in, but you can never leave.
You're doing all this work still. You're producing your videos. You're still working on the book. If I've got that right. And
no, I'm not working on the book. I'm just working with other people, and if I can help them in their what they want to do as well, because I've got design skills to make things look professional.
Right. And so you've been producing material that other people can use.
Well, we've got postcards, about John Halley's book, and people are handing those out to folk outside the courts, because we have to. I think we have to bring down the courts. It has to be restructured, or there's no future for anybody. There is no future for anybody if you've got all these conflicts of interest.
Do you still get time to work normally? I use that word carefully.
Well, I was trying to get my life in a bit of order, and then maybe apply for jobs again. Now I know I don't have a criminal. I don't have a culpable and reckless charge outstanding. So I've just found that out, really, which is quite well, obviously it's good news. Yeah. But I was, never going to be told. So and I'd like to go to America next spring.
Right. And at one stage you were doing architectural work. Are you still looking for that sort of work? Or
no, I mean, that was my first degree. But then I did a master's in computer programming. But Brian, if you're out for a year even, you can't get back into these things. The pace that they move at is so fast.
Right.
But I don't need to work full time. I just, I want, part time.
Okay.
Or I could write another murder mystery, but I'm finding it, like everyone, very, very hard to
you don't need to write a murder mystery. We're living it.
Exactly.
We're living it. Look, we are. I think we're just coming up to time for this chat. It's been really wonderful. I wanted to end on a positive thing. When you sent me the little video clip of you singing and your husband was there playing the guitar, I noticed on the wall in the background you had a violin, and I asked you about this, and you said to me that, if I got this right, you play the piano, the cello, and you're trying to teach yourself the violin. That sounds like a lot to keep yourself busy.
Yes, but I need to focus, and I find that difficult because I feel there's no future unless something flips in our favour. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that.
So do you get
prison that they're creating for us? I mean, so I find it hard to. I mean, I would be doing different things if the government would stop terrorising us. I would be working on different things, obviously.
Yeah, but I mean, do you still get some? What's the word? Can you escape from all of this going on by playing music?
Yeah, so well, I think that's important, and I try and force myself to go for a walk. If the sun's out, I'm lucky I live near the sea, so just hearing the waves crashing. I've tried to grow vegetables, so varying success with that. I'm lucky to have a garden, so I feel I've gone back to trying to go back to my roots.
Yeah,
I think we'd lost our way. We all had. And the sensible people know now what's important in life, and other people have not learned any lessons.
Family and friends and proper relations with people.
And growing food.
Yeah. Wow.
And growing organic vegetables.
All right. What a good place to end on music and walks by the sea and organic vegetables, thinking of family and friends. That must be a good place to end on. Moira, I'm going to say thank you very much for talking to me. I am sure that people who haven't come across you before are going to be absolutely fascinated by all the things that you've done. Whether you like it or not, you're gutsy, that's for sure.
Thanks, Brian. And I hope I haven't depressed people too much. But I think we're all struggling to find optimism. We just have to keep going and telling the truth, and hopefully something will flip in our favour soon.
Yeah, brilliant. Mm-hmm. Okay, right. Moira, thank you very much for that. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks, Brian. Bye-bye.